I am Mark Hummel, and this is Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party, and we are in Manteca, California at a fella who I just met through my friend Bill Kirchin and the Cody band. This is Bobby Black, and he's going to be our guest today, and Bobby is one of the most famous steel players in music. I mean, for many, many years. You've been playing since the 40s?
Yeah, oh yeah.
1940s.
Yeah.
And Bobby is semi-retired, but I saw you doing shows with the Commander Cody tribute that you guys did at the Freight and Salvage, I guess, about 3 months ago or something like that.
We were there for that.
I was there, yeah.
I probably met, did I meet you there?
We met there, yes. We met there, and I think it was your son that introduced me. Maybe.
Yeah, I thought it was. He was there.
Right.
My oldest was there, yeah.
Exactly. And so I wanted to just kind of talk about your history, because you have an amazing history in music. And you and your brother Larry started playing as teenagers, correct?
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. And you came up in Arizona, or did you move out here?
No, we had moved from Arizona right after Pearl Harbor was, the thing, in 41. And we moved to, this is really... It did really well for me in the rest of my life. When we moved from Arizona to California, and there was a war. It was really getting, really getting pretty serious.
Heating up, yeah.
And we moved to Burbank, and then we wanted to go in North Hollywood. We lived there for several years throughout World War II. Mm-hmm. And of course, the war years were incredible, but we thought they were kids. We didn't realize what real war was about.
Right.
And but we played at it. And for Christmas, we'd want to get helmets and rifles and whatever else having to do with World War II. And my parents would go, "Oh, well, okay," they would say it was okay, but we still believed in Santa Claus too,
But luckily, you guys were young enough. You weren't in danger of getting drafted.
Yeah, that's right. And my dad, of course, used the fact that he was a very successful businessman. He started out when he was a teenager sweeping floors for one of the very first Woolworth 5 and dimes, and he worked his way up to. I won't go into detail, but he wound up being a real. I can't think of the right words to make it right, but he was respected by everybody that he worked with, and he worked his way up to the vice presidency from the basement, sweeping floors, to the vice presidency for the rest of his life.
At Woolworths. At Woolworths.
He was a wonderful father, somebody to look up to for sure, and I give him and my mother for whatever I stand for. Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah.
It's because of them.
And which of the brothers was older, you or Larry?
I was the older.
You were the older
2 years older than my brother.
Yeah.
And so I talked him, and so I started, there was no television back in those early days. So I became a radio bug. And I turned the radio on. When we moved from Arizona to California, I would sit by my parents and all my friends worried about me because all I wanted to do was listen to the radio. Mm-hmm. I sat there every day, couldn't wait to get up to her. We had one of those great big radios,
right.
like a jukebox.
Right.
And that was, by the way, it was just around the time the jukebox was invented, because we had come from Arizona, and there was my parents would take us to dinner every Friday night. That was always something to look forward to. And so we'd go to this Roadhouse coffee shop, not far from where we lived in Tucson. Mm-hmm. And so we were regulars there anyway. So we always look forward. So one night we went there for dinner, and there was this jukebox there. It was one of the first, I guess. We couldn't believe it. The lights and the colors and. Well, my goodness, you could put a nickel in it and listen to music. It's So I started thinking about songs that and found them. All these And so there, I give that the reason, the time where my interest in music was really awakened at that point. I was about, I don't know what, 6 or 7, maybe here. Anyway.
And what kind of music did you hear first?
I heard, the first kind of stuff I heard was, you ever remember a group called the Ink Spots?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Ink Spots were big at the time. They were new, and they were the sound they had, the harmonies, all black guys. And that was really something new and amazing to me. And I heard, that's where my becoming a musician started. Right there, I heard, we'd go there Friday night, and my dad would have to play that song for me over and over. I don't want to set the world on fire. I could hear that, my every note of that, just like the record, you know. And I really know that that's where I started to recognize harmony. He's got four-part harmony. Not like the Four Freshmen later, who became one of my favorites too, but the four-part harmony with the Ink Spots was real straight, but it was so, you could hear every part, and it was the blending and all that stuff that they had. They were so beneficial to my being a musician. Hearing their stuff, and then other things were similar. Other groups came along, and they were usually like black groups too, mostly, that were doing all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the Sons of the Pioneers came along. These white guys were doing all the cowboy music and stuff and things. So I took to that too. And my ear developed, and I could play by ear really soon after my folks gave me one Christmas a steel guitar.
Really? So they gave you a steel guitar?
It was a little Rickenbacker, a little thing, you know.
Yeah. And when did your brother pick up the guitar?
Well, it wasn't that, he was kind of making fun of me at first. He said, "Oh, you fiddle with that thing, you know, let's go play with whatever." We had to run down to the river. We lived near the LA River, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And that was our everyday, it was another world for us. It was like a jungle.
Now, what town? You were in Burbank. You were in Burbank.
Oh, we were in Burbank at that point. We moved from, yeah, that's right.
Right.
Anyway, we moved from, but we would run down there, and that was our world, you know, the LA River.
Right.
And boy, we didn't see it. It was after we moved away many years later that we saw the movies where they put the concrete.
Right.
It's a whole different thing. It was so sad.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah. So that was before the concrete.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Oh, okay. Yeah. Because I grew up there in the 50s and early 60s, and it was like the concrete was already in.
Well, I see. Yeah. Well, anyway, it was like a jungle then. And the river, the LA River. And so we could swear that we go to these Tarzan movies, you know, Tarzan movies. And we're going to say, well, that's our place.
That's where it was filmed.
And we could tell that it was.
Yeah.
That's where they filmed a lot of those movies.
Right.
And that was where we grew up playing there all the time. And anyway, on and on.
So how did you and your brothers start working together? Like, you were teenagers at that point when you started, right?
I think my brother might have been, you know, I should know. I can't remember for sure, but I was just barely teenagers, I guess. But I was about, I want to say, how old was I at that time? Oh, Lord. I was probably 10 or 11, around there.
When you started playing
my
with
brother,
your brother.
2 years younger. He, you know, and of course, he always wanted, we played out and did all that stuff at LA River. But when I started listening to the radio, and then the television came along, whatever year that was, but it was around that time, somewhere around that time. That was an incredible thing. Of course, the television, but the radio thing, I had all these favorite shows. The Bob Wills thing, where they played nothing but Bob Wills all day long.
And he was based out of Sacramento at that point, wasn't he?
Well, he was not really. He was. He for a short period of time he was, and he took Tiny Moore. And gave Tiny Moore the band and some other good. They always came up with the best players in the business. They really did.
Yeah,
they had the best pickers of all. Bob Willis was not one of them, but he was the head man, and he knew how to head a band, and he had that all thing going.
Right.
And my mom used to say, "Well, that damn fool! What do you?" She listened to me. I get all these Bob Wills records in for Christmas and birthday, and I take my allowance money and go down and buy. And in those days, you could go into a record store, which was not many of them around, and they had these booths in the back.
Right.
And you could pick out records, 78s and things like that, and take them and play them and see if you want to buy it.
Right.
You know, and that's what. So I do that. And when I learned what the steel guitar sounded like, I could hear that because I didn't know at first what it was.
Yeah.
I could then recognize it, and so I go in and take my allowance money and then I buy these old records. I've still got a whole bunch of them right down there.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you buying mainly country records?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they didn't call it country back then. It was either hillbilly or western.
Oh, okay.
And, C&W came later. It was like C&W.
Right.
But first it was like hillbilly, and that was a little bit too far out in the woods for me, So, but I liked the cowboy type of stuff they were starting to come in with it. It was a whole different thing it is now.
Right.
Country, the rock and roll came along and changed the whole thing, changed everything. But anyway,
you were playing in the late 40s or mid 40s, or when would you say you started playing gigs?
It was around the late 40s that I may have gotten that guitar. I didn't know what a steel guitar looked like. I found out what it was. I buy these records and it was steel guitar rag, of course,
right.
Those kind of things. And listened to it, and so I was familiar with the sound of it. But I didn't really see what it looked like very often. So there was a music store down where we rode our bikes. So Studio City was right up from where we lived, from North Hollywood. When we moved to North Hollywood. And so we would go up to Studio City, and there was a music store there, and I went in and asked this guy, we went in and said, "We have any steel guitars?" He said, "Well, they've got a couple hanging out in the window there." And I went, "Really?" We went out and there was these two steels hanging up together. One was a Rickenbacker and another one was, I can't remember what the other one was. Mm-hmm. And it didn't look like a guitar at all, of course, but the Rickenbacker was shaped like it. It was about the shape of a ukulele, sort of, And I looked at it and I thought, wow, that's far out, whatever it was, weird. So I stood and stared at those things and never got tired of looking at them. I could still see them right now, every inch of them. And I told my parents, and they said, "Oh, you don't want to do all that." Anyway, my brother was kind of making fun of me too. And he'd say, "Oh, you want to go see that again, those things again?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go. Come on." So their camera shop was right next door there. So we'd go up there and I'd look at the guitars in the window, and then next door I let my brother go over. It was a camera shop, and he'd go. And so he got into cameras, and he became a real good photographer as a result.
Wow.
That's another whole story. Anyway, so I told my parents about it. They were doing what I wanted for Christmas and all that kind of thing, and birthday or whatever it was. And they tried to kind of dissuade me a little bit, but okay, whatever. And what do you think? We'll see what Santa Claus might say about it all. I think we even still believe in Santa Claus. Anyhow, so come Christmas, I got both of those.
Wow.
But I could only keep one.
Santa Claus brought them.
Santa Claus brought them. He said that you could only have one, but you can try, So I chose the Rickenbacker because it was I thought it was called steel guitar. It was made out of metal, pressed. It was just one piece of metal. Anyway, I could still see that one. Boy, I wish I still had it. Anyway.
So what was your first gig? Do you remember your first gig with Larry?
Yeah, let's see. That's a good question. Gosh sakes. It was, I'm trying to remember with who it might have been. Oh, isn't that a crazy thing that I can't remember that for sure? The first gig was not while we lived in North Hollywood, though. Because my dad would take, by the way, I have to mention my people that I looked up to that inspired me to, and still do to this day, was Noel Boggs. You probably know some of these people. I don't know. Noel Boggs, maybe no. Speedy West.
Speedy West.
He was one. Speedy West, Noel Boggs, Joaquin Murphy. They were the steel players that there were in all these recordings I was listening to. Most of those guys. Herb Remington was on the Bob Wills stuff.
Right.
And he also used Noel Boggs in early days as well. Noel Boggs was, so these guys all became my heroes. And I
did you get to know those guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
I finally did later on. That's amazing. And then Jerry Bird came along. And I, in the meantime, I didn't know had no idea when I got my first steel. I thought you must be able to tune it to a guitar So I found where a guitar tuning, put a guitar tuning on it, couldn't figure out, naturally, what to do with it.
And what is the tuning on it?
Well, this is the thing about this. The steel guitar was and still is, in my opinion, the most mysterious musical instrument ever. There's nothing else like it, really. You could say like a dobro and all that. So that's just an out thing from the guitar thing. But it's not like a guitar. People think it's, because it's called a steel guitar, it's like a guitar. And there's nothing about it other than the strings that are similar. And in the old days, it was the box form before the electric. It was, to get the sound out of it. But the steel guitar, to this day, still I get calls from people today wanting to do like we're doing right now.
Right. Interviews, yeah.
Interviews.
Yeah.
And they want to know about it. A steel guitar is still, and I said, well, yeah. I said, it's a mystery instrument, not only to the public, but also to a lot of the players. They still, to this day, I hear people doing stuff with it. They think, well, anyway, I don't agree with it.
Well, how do you tune it? I mean, what are the actual...
There's no standard tuning.
There's no standard tuning.
I didn't know that. I thought so.
Right.
Didn't know how to tune it at all. I had no idea because I knew the guitar tuning. There was no standard tuning. So I wrote a letter to the Grand Ole Opry and sent it to, because I knew that Jerry Bird at that time had become the steel player of the Grand Ole Opry. And I loved what he did. He played the prettiest steel of all. He was real smooth, and he was influenced by the Hawaiians. Because, the Hawaiian music was where you could find steel guitar recorded mostly.
Right.
And so that really influenced me a lot. And so I asked him I didn't know what to do, how to tune it. And he said, he gave it to me. 6 strings at that time. It was only 6. And it was called the C6. It was a major C6, C major 6.
So that's the chord you tune it to.
Yeah, E, C, A, G, E, C from the top down. Okay. I'll never forget. Tuned it up to those. And I was listening to all these records.
Right.
And I tuned it up. And when I tuned it up, I could hear the stuff that I was listening to.
Okay.
In that tuning.
Yeah.
And with people like Jerry Bird and Joaquin Murphy used it, and all the top steel players at the time, that was the most popular tuning.
Right.
I think it was mainly because of Jerry Bird.
Yeah.
But then people started experimenting because they found out you didn't have to tune it like that. You could tune it any way you wanted.
Yeah.
And that's still the case today. And there's the most popular tunings that people use are probably still the C major 6, that variation. Okay. That's what I use. Where is it? Oh, I got it here somewhere.
Yeah. Right here.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That's the core of my tuning, but now I have had 12 for a while. I used 12 strings. I thought, that's too damn many strings. So I took one off. I have 11. And most people only have either they used to do 6, 8, 10, or 12. And then they started going to 14 and on. It got ridiculous,
Yeah.
Trying to get
Who was the first big name that you guys played with? Do you remember?
That's a good question, because when we moved up from up to the Bay Area from L.A. We weren't playing professionally at all. But I was all dreaming of that, dreaming of it, to be able to play with people someday. Like we were going to see Spade Cooley. Spade Cooley had a TV, the early television. It was early television. He had a show. It was really popular.
Now, was he out of L.A. or Sacramento?
This is when we were
or Bay, the Bay Area. Was he out of L.A. or Sacramento or the Bay Area?
Well, the Bay Area.
Spade Cooley was?
No, I beg your pardon. No, Spade Cooley was based in L.A.
In L.A., okay. Right.
And so he, as well, because of his band, the band he had Joaquin Murphy. And Joaquin Murphy took the C6. He played a C6 too. And he played real jazzy compared to Jerry Bird. Jerry Bird was playing Hawaiian sort of style. Pretty, kind of thing. And Joaquin was playing Cardax, just really playing hot stuff.
Yeah.
And so I took to both of those. I thought, wow, that's all great, Anyway, so part of why I play today, anyway.
Yeah.
And anyway.
So did you get to know him as well, Spade Cooley?
Yeah. But in a weird way, though.
He was kind of a bad alcoholic,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
he was one of the most successful early television stars.
Right.
His show was #1 for a while.
But it was a pretty gruesome ending, as I recall.
He was a terrible, terrible thing that happened.
Like a wife beater, and
he murdered his wife.
Yeah, murdered his wife.
And not only murdered her in a terrible way.
Yeah.
In front of their daughter.
Right. I remember hearing about that.
He was one of the most popular people in early television.
Right.
Fans galore, worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
He blew. You talk about blowing it, and but he got into, I guess, drugs
and alcohol.
I'm sure it was drugs and alcohol. Yeah. And he thought that and I got to know some of the people that he had in his band, and they tell me that he resembled. I think it was him that resembled the movie actor. I can't think.
Robert Mitchum or something.
No, not like that, but more of a. Anyway,
let me look him up. I'll look up a picture of him, and you can tell me. Let's see.
I want to say, if somebody was with Roy Rogers, Roy Rogers was popular at that time,
right?
And doing the movies, and
right.
And Spade Cooley was making. We heard, and I'm sure it was true. He's making $10,000 a week, and that was like $1 million.
There he is.
Oh yeah. I can't see with the dang. Yeah, Spade, that's right. Anyway, yeah, and see, is that his fiddle? It doesn't look like it. Well, maybe.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Anyway, but that's him. Oh yeah, that's him for sure.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, he was a kind of short guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, and by the way, he was a nice guy.
Was he?
This after the tragic end of him, when he was found guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Of murder. It was shocking to the industry,
right?
And everybody, they couldn't believe it. And we played. My brother and I at the time. By the time we played with him, was after he was convicted, was doing time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember we were playing this gig for we did a lot of. My brother and I had a band or bands that played all the time through the years. Everywhere, wherever we could find
all over the country.
We were just busy.
Yeah.
And so we would play the New Year's Eve. We play at the San Quentin, and other times we played all at Alcatraz, and all these places. And this one time we're playing, and the stage. In fact, one of the first times we got a gig with I think it was in San Quentin. We were behind a curtain. They had a theater, big theater for the convicts.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a guy from the San Francisco Opera sing, because they always started with, "Oh, say, can we see?"
Right.
And he got about that far. You came out, and we were behind the curtain getting the curtain. But first, this guy came out front of the curtain. And he was a big-looking dude, big guy, big, strong guy. He went out there, and he booed. And the pretty soon boo, and the boos started. I'm talking, it was the crowd drowned him out.
Wow.
And his voice was, and he was, and we were sitting, I was sitting right behind the curtain where he was.
Right.
And I could hear his voice. he started singing like that. And I thought, my God, and we were looking at each other,
like he's going to get murdered.
And we're next.
Right.
We're next. And this guy barely made it and made the exit, and they just moved. And then the curtain went, draw. I can't remember whether it went this way or that way, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And we went up, and I thought they're gonna come attack us maybe.
Right.
So, and they burst into a cheer. Ah! And it was just like, we're in.
Right.
It's okay, and no matter
it's gonna
what
be
we
all
did,
right.
they loved us.
Yeah,
We played country stuff and whatever.
So was Spade Cooley in there?
Well, I was just saying, he wasn't in San Quentin, by the way, but it was in another one later.
Okay,
not
like
much,
Folsom or something?
Long longer after that,
Yeah.
we played another one in the Bay Area. I can't remember which one it was. And we set up and everything, and we played it. I think we played a set.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy came walking up, and I looked at him, and I kind of almost, not right away, but I thought, could that be? It was Spade.
Wow.
And he came... I don't know why I'm going to put these glasses on so I can see, but anyway, He came up looking at me. I got up and I went, Spade Cody. And he looked up at me, you know, real sheepish. He was holding his fiddle like this in his case. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was a fiddle, of course.
Yeah.
And I went, my God. You know, and he said, do you let anybody sit in? And I said, get up here, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. And we got him to come up, and he played the rest of the gig. We played quite a while with him up there.
Wow.
And strangely, the inmates, because he was, everybody knew who he was.
Yeah.
They took to him.
I bet they did.
They dug that. They thought that was incredible. He was up there playing with these guys. And
that's amazing.
And he was doing it. He could still play.
Yeah.
And when we got through playing, it was over. I went up to him. I was close as this. I went up to him and Spade, and he had tears.
Oh man!
And I thought, this is a sad thing. This guy, he was somebody else. You know, he was someone else before and after that horrible time that he lost it. Yeah. And his life was ruined, as well as his wife was dead. And that's all.
That's a tragic story.
Tragic.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. Of course, he died in prison, you know, as you know.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, but he at one time was the #1 television star.
Oh yeah, he was
his
huge.
band.
Huge.
They were the #1 show and everything. So they inspired me. That whole thing, all those players inspired me.
Yeah. All right, so we're still talking to Bobby Black here about his history in music, which is a long, long, long career, and all the different people that you've played with. And the one question I wanted to ask you was about the gig you told me about on the phone, about opening for Hank Williams, and you and your brother.
I get asked that, and I didn't say that, but I get asked that so often.
Well, it's an amazing story.
And I tell people, I think I told you that already. I didn't, but my brother did in the back room.
Right. And you said he was working on Kalijah when you were in the back room.
My brother and I were at that time, we were doing well with our bands, and we had a good band, and we did lots of opening acts and things, besides having regular being starred as the main players. But we opened for lots of people in those days because we wound up being early on good players. Mm-hmm. Because we copied the stuff, you know, the records and people, the hits and stuff, note for note, could play them. Mm-hmm. And we could play just as good as just about anybody. Yeah. I could copy Speedy West. I'm not saying I played just like him, but, you know.
You had a good ear for it.
Good ear for it. And so, anyway, that sort of thing. So.
Now, where was this, by the way?
It was where we played with. Okay, yeah. It was a place called Tracy Gardens in San Jose. Okay, and it was it's long gone now. But at the time, it was a hot spot. In those days, dance halls were big hot spots and stuff. And so we went early on. We moved up there with my parents. We moved up there from North Hollywood at that time. We moved up to San Mateo. Mm-hmm. And we right away, there was an early television show called I'm not sure you'll can't remember the name of the show, but it was a local talent show. Mm-hmm. They'd have new talent on the show from the Bay Area, and you call in to see who's the winner. They'd pick a winner each week in the show from the calls. And so Larry and I, I'll always remember we applied for the show, and they said, yeah, a steel guitar. Everybody was, to this day it happens. People, steel guitar is rare, you know. And so it's just the two of us. I talked, long before that, I talked Larry to learn how to play rhythm so he could accompany me. Mm-hmm. I could play stuff. And then he started playing leads and stuff, you know, that sort of thing. So we relied on each other. So we were a duo that became sought after eventually. Mm-hmm. But anyway, going back to this TV show, not long after we moved up there, we got on the show. They said, we want you on the show. I'm not used to talking this much, and my throat is, excuse me.
Can I go get you some water?
I might have to do that and take a break. But anyway, we did this show. And they, of course, you could tell that the MC, and I don't remember who all was running the show, they were, as like most people, were fascinated by the steel. They want to know more about what is that thing, you know, kind of thing. Anyway, we won that week. People got the most calls. People called in, voted for us, and that kind of opened up doors for us, and it sort of grew through the years. And Larry and I became, you know, we had several bands through the years, all the decades. We played. I've been playing for almost eight decades, but it's seven, you know, the late 70s, you know. Mm-hmm. But anyway, crazy. Anyway, so we won that, and so we got calls to do store openings. There's a new market in San Mateo where we lived, and they had us come down and they put us on a flatbed truck. Right. And we played our steel, and we were at that time attracted attention. People see up there, look the steel, we'd stay, and I stood, you know, like that. I stood that way. Right. In old days like that, there was no pedals before pedals. Nobody had ever thought of pedals before, but it was just, but I had a volume pedal, of course. Right. Anyway, so we just did that kind of thing, and people, it was a winner kind of thing. Yeah. It served us well. So when you opened for Hank, yeah, and you said he wanted to hire your brother or something. Yes, absolutely. He was, and all right, thank you. Right. Thanks, Ed. There you go. All right. Yeah, thanks. Anyway, yeah. We got a job. We went into this place. It was a hot spot for people. Bob Wills, Hank Williams, Ernest Tubb, the Baddest Brothers. Well, you know, you name it. People from those days that were stars, would appear at one time or another. Lefty Frizzell later on, and on up the line, at this place called Tracy Gardens. It was a big dance hall. And the owner of the dance hall was a guy named Shorty Joe, and he had a band of his own. See that picture up there in the middle, that black and white? That's the band. That's the band right there. Wow. And so he had this band. Joe, yeah. And so we became, first of all, became regulars. We'd go to their shows and stuff to see them and see who was going to be there in the band. And then we eventually wound up sitting in with these guys. And people say, they got these guys up, these kids can play, you know? Yeah. And you guys were teenagers. Yeah, we were still going to school, you know, all that sort of thing. And we're both in high school, I think, early high school. But and we were the talk of the, you know, here and there because of that. These guys play, they do this and that. Blah. And so we became real good friends with all the guys in the band, including the steel player. Pee Wee White Wing, by the way, became a real friend. And he was the same age as me. In fact, I think he was a month older than me, and I used to always make fun of him. You know? Right. You're older than me, man. Anyway. But anyway, so he was, they would back up people that would come to town. There was one of the places, the hot spots, where people would be booked. Lefty Frizzell, Hank Williams, all, you name it. So did you get to play with all those guys? All the names. Well, not at first, no. But this band eventually wound up playing with the people that didn't have their own bands. And not everybody had their own bands. Right. They were just alone, you know. And so this band, they were good, you know. Now, you said Hank did have his own band, though. But he was there with his own band. Right. And anyway, it was unbelievable. The story it sounds phony, but it's absolutely true. We went early because we were going to get to open for Hank Williams because he was hot at that time. He was there. They always had the #1 songs and we thought, man, we got a chance to open for those guys and him. And so we went down early to set up our stuff and be ready to play for the opening act, which we would do, and then we just take our stuff off. And so we go into the place. Nobody in there. It was empty. We always had the access to the place. Right. And so we go in there, and And we ran into a couple of guys, I think the janitor and somebody was cleaning up and getting this sort of thing. And pretty soon, so I looked and the steel was sitting up on the legs, standing. And I'm having trouble with the names, but the player was famous, the steel player, and I can't think of his name right now. Hank Williams player. And he wasn't there. But I said, look, this is, and I started kind of seeing how he tuned it, and I heard somebody, don't fuck with the instruments. Anyway, a guy came out, and it was the manager, Hank Williams' manager, Marty Landau, by the way. I didn't remember names. And he said, come out, what are you guys doing or something? Oh, we're the backup band. I'm with you. Well, don't, leave him to live. I said, I'm not going to. He said, you want to see Hank, right? I said, he's in the back room. Go, you can go in. So we go in the back room, and he's sitting in there, sitting down. He had sitting with his guitar, and he had a bottle of whiskey. And it wasn't a surprise because he already had a reputation,
Right.
And he went, hey, how you doing? Or something. And we told him we were opening for him, and hey. He said, I'm working on a new song here, boys. Would you like to have a drink? And I said, no. And so my brother, of course, I think this is where he started to go. He really took a liking to the, having drinks.
Right.
I never did. Yeah. But Larry said, okay, so Hank was over there. He thought that was cool, And so Hank said, see what you think. And he started saying, Kalijah was a wooden Indian. And he started singing that in the minor key.
Right.
That's kind of weird. I never heard a country artist sing in a minor key like that.
Right.
Especially Hank Williams. He was so, And he said he wasn't through. He was just working on it. He didn't sing the whole thing.
Oh wow!
And we're going, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Wow!" I said, "That's really different." He said, "Yeah, whatever." And so he said, "Why don't you go get your guitars?" And because we told him we were opening, get your guitars, bring them in here, let's jam. And I said, "Oh man, I don't want to." I said, "I got to carry my steel in an amp. I don't want to do that." Larry said, "Come on, man." And I said, "No, I don't want to do it." And so he got his guitar.
Right.
So he went and got his guitar, and so they started playing and singing.
And you said he had an electric.
Huh?
He had an electric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Larry was playing electric. It was an Epiphone with the Armen pickup.
Right.
And which was that was before where they ever made their built-in, electric guitars.
Pickups. Yeah.
And so that was the hottest thing that people were using at that time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Hank said, anyway, that came a little later. I sat and listened to him for a little bit, and I thought, anyway, so I took off. I went out, and I don't know what, I looked up some people that were out, and they were in there jamming.
Wow.
Larry and Hank. And by the time I got back in there, I think Larry was kind of well along with the whiskey as well, too. And they were having a good time.
Yeah.
And it was, and they were the people were coming in at this time. So I thought, well, I'll be damned. So we had to get ready to play, and so Hank had to get, and they weren't set up to play because.
Didn't you say first. Hank offered him the job?
Yeah, I wasn't there when it, but Larry said, guess what? He said Hank wants me to go back to wherever he's from,
Alabama.
Yeah. And he wants me to be in the band. and I believe it. I still to this day believe it because Larry was just a kid.
Yeah. And
he played, by the way, he could play.
Yeah.
He was a good player.
Yeah.
Because he had started young and he could play jazz. He played great lead stuff and he had an ear and he played great rhythm. He just knew how to play, just like a pro. He was a pro. He always was. And I said, man, he said, my God, really? And he said, yeah, I told him I can't. I mean, my mom will let me. And so that kind of goes to the story because I thought, that's exactly what happened.
Right.
And so, anyway.
So when did you meet George Jones? Because you met him before he was famous, right?
Well, we were playing the same place, Tracy Gardens in San Jose. We opened for so many people. Whoa, what was that?
Was that guitar playing?
Well, anyway, so we one night a night a week we had a talent contest. Mm-hmm. People could sign up or whatever over there and come up and we'd have a contest and people would vote by the clapping for the winner and all that sort of thing. And so this Marine guy came in dressed in a Marine, Marines.
Marine uniform?
And it was a Marine uniform, and he was stationed at, what's the place in Palo Alto there? You know, on the air, I can't, once again, can't.
Like,
what's the name of the place there? You know,
not Fort Ord.
No. Oh my gosh.
You talk about where the dirigibles used to be? Was that it? Moffett Field?
It was Moffett Field there.
Right.
It was where the, you know, anyway.
Right.
And he was stationed there. And his name was, you know, George Jones. We called him, you know,
You called him the Singing Marine.
Singing Marine.
Yeah.
George the Singing Marine.
Right.
And he would get up there, you know, and put his hand, because he wasn't used to being in a band,
right?
You know, from a band, and singing, and he sang Hank Williams stuff.
Right. And he really sang
most people would do that.
He really sang it well. He
knew how to sing it. He could sing it better than Hank.
The hell of it. Yeah.
He had the style from, and it wasn't a put on, it was just his sound that he had.
Yeah.
And people were going, whoa.
Yeah. He really could sing, Hank.
Oh, we thought, Mike, this guy is this great singer. He could sing.
Yeah.
And that's him. And he had we called him Burrhead too at times because his hair was about that.
Right. Right.
But it was the start of his, well, that not really the start of his career, but that's where we saw where it was blooming.
Right.
And we did never imagine that he would ever become as big as he did. But anyway, so when Bill Kirchner. So
Bill mentioned the thing about that you ran into him one time on a
because I told him the story.
Train platform or something.
Years ago, and it was, he remembered. But yeah. And so, but I got a job. I was going to high school. Larry and I were both in high school, and he was 2 years behind me. He was, I think he was a sophomore. And in his class, by the way, was Chris Christopherson. They were buddies too, you know, with Chris.
How about George? George Jones?
No, Chris was a schoolmate of ours.
Of yours? Really?
Yeah, and he was Larry's class. So we were old friends with Chris way before anybody ever heard of him.
Well, did Chris live in the Bay Area?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He lived in Burlington.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's
I know
wild.
most people don't. And
no.
That's another story, by the way. That's amazing, really. But anyway,
he was like a Rhodes Scholar.
Yes.
Yeah.
He, in my opinion, was one of the geniuses of all time.
Yeah.
He was so, not only a genius, but had the kind of personality that was to take him to places you would never guess. And he became a chopper pilot that was...
Right.
That he did all kinds of stuff with that.
And the interesting story I heard was the thing about him working in Nashville. Wasn't he a janitor or something at one of the studios?
I was just going to get to that. So you're very good. Yes, thank you. Yeah. I'll jump into that point.
Yeah.
This is some years later, Larry and I had established ourselves in Nashville through different people, Pete Drake and a bunch of people.
Right.
Because of our playing ability, you know, and songs we'd write and stuff. And so we'd each eat at a place called Lion Balls on Broadway, which here all the people would go, with all the entertainers that go to eat.
Right.
An all-day restaurant. And we go in there and, for lunch and stuff often. We went in there one day and had lunch, and we were just on our way out. There was a little table right by the doorway that we go out there, and this guy's sitting in, and we go, Chris Christopherson, yeah, how you doing? Whoa, you know, we've got a great, you know, surprising each other. What are you doing, you guys doing there? I said, we got a record deal. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And he went, oh man. He said, we said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm writing some songs, he said. And I thought, oh, God, one of those guys. Songwriter, another songwriter. Really, Chris? Because
that's what the world needs, right?
We knew him, by the way, for his his ability in school.
Right.
He was a high-ranking...
Mensa or something.
Yeah, one of those kind of things where he was a special student.
Yeah. Smart
guy.
Really smart.
Well, in my opinion, one of the geniuses of all time. Anyway.
Right.
But at that time, we just knew him as his buddy, and he was in the sports. He was a president at one point in San Mateo High. He was a high school president for the juniors.
Really?
Eventually, when they were good. But anyway, so we said, "What do you?" And so I'm writing some songs. And I said, "Oh," and so we said, "Oh man, that's not really."
You don't want to do that.
We don't want to do that. We thought we were going to do him a favor.
Yeah, right.
Do him a favor so he wouldn't waste his time.
Right.
Because he said, I said, you got to get a job. He said, well, I got a job down over at Columbia sweeping floors.
Right, exactly.
And I thought, oh my God, well, there you go. I said,
good luck, buddy.
Yeah, good luck. That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
Said that. And anyway, the rest is history. But
yeah. Well, I heard that he kind of got discovered by, I don't know if it was Owen Bradley or somebody that.
Yeah, Owen Bradley. Oh, yeah. He was
that got hip to him.
Top producer and stuff.
Right away, yeah.
And so, because his songs, you have to admit, were different, especially in those days, than anybody else's. And they attracted attention, and the high-ranking, successful singers.
Guys like Johnny Cash,
And basically, careers were heightened by taking off.
Janis Joplin, so many famous
Chris
people.
became a name everybody's
major.
Amazing guy.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Now, I have a question. Did you play on Midnight at the Oasis? Was that you?
Did I play on it?
Did you play on it?
I can't remember if I did or not.
By Maria Muldaur?
Who did it?
Maria Muldaur?
Oh, no, I don't think I did that version. No.
Okay.
I played it with some other people.
All right. But for some reason, I wasn't.
Yeah, that's right.
I wasn't sure about that. So another story was, Bill wanted me to ask you about, this is Bill Kirchner we're talking about, that Bobby has played with forever. But the other one about your one drinking experience or something. And I guess George Jones had something to do with it, or was that not the case?
Wait, let me remember.
So about that you barely drank, but one time I don't know if that was.
I'm trying to remember which one that was story. I got a million of them, I'm trying to remember which ones. Because through the years, it just happens. I don't go try to wind up and make up stories.
Right.
They just come, they happen,
But what other George Jones stories do you have, I guess I'll say?
Because we got to know George. But that was the time when I got my Bigsby. I got one
right,
of the
that's
earliest
right.
Bigsbys.
Yeah, he talked about that.
Yeah, that was maybe that's what you mean.
Right.
And when it came, I got a notice where I was staying at this. I was playing with one of the top swing bands in Texas at that time. That eventually became really high ranking.
Who was that?
Blackie Crawford, the Western Cherokees.
Oh, okay.
They eventually became the Cherokee Cowboys, then they were with Ray Price.
Oh, wow.
And so I got a chance to play with all those people early in their careers.
Wow. So you play with Ray Price as well?
And so early days, so I've got a list somewhere here.
Yeah.
I'm going to show it to you
all
later.
the people.
You won't believe it.
Oh, I would believe it.
I know you're going to think, this guy's...
No. I know you.
I know you are, but
I know you play with everybody.
It doesn't look impossible that I could...
Tell me a Lefty Frizzell story. Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you one that you probably never heard.
Okay.
And maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. But he was... going back to Shorty Joe, the Pee Wee White Wing, the steel player that I replaced in the Tracy Gardens.
Right.
He got a job. Lefty Frizzell was a big star, and he was appearing there, and he liked Pee Wee's playing. Mm-hmm. And he hired him. He said, just like with the Hank Williams deal, he said, I want to take you back to, wherever, with Lefty Frizzell. And so he quit the band to do that and moved to wherever it was, Texas or Oklahoma, one of whichever it was. Mm-hmm. And so the band leader at Tracy Gardens hired me and my brother because they knew that we were a team. He knew that we were a team, so he would almost always, where one went, the other would go, Laurie and I. Mm-hmm. And so we became regulars at Tracy Gardens. And in doing that, from then on, all these different people that would be booked there would appear there at one time or another, and we play behind them, that sort of thing. And so, what was I going to give? It was Lefty Frizzell. It was Lefty. It was we were. I wound up following in the footsteps of Pee Wee. He left and went with Hank Thompson
Okay.
And so then, because of him, he said, hire Bobby Black because he could play. So I got a chance. That was my first time away from home, and I moved back to Texas. No, Oklahoma first. The first was Oklahoma City, and then it was Beaumont. And it was with this hot swing band. And that's another story I won't even get into because it goes on and on. But it's just amazing part of I got to know all these people, the Carter family. We were backing up. That band was in those days, a lot of people couldn't afford a backup band.
Right.
So they would have these various bands would be backup bands that would do and I was doing a lot of that sort of thing. Playing and backing up people right and left.
Mm-hmm. And
got to know a lot of the players of those bands that were just incredible. The people that I got to know and stuff, that went on. But anyway, I was out, I got a message that this thing was down at the post office or down, where they had this thing brought in. It was out on in the front of the place, out on the, the board, out in the train platform.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Sitting out there. And I went out there and with a friend of mine in the band that was in the band I was playing Black Rock, and I tell him, my Bigsby is here. So we went out there, couldn't wait. I just tore it down and tore off to look at it. Right on the platform. People started coming around going, whoa, what is that? Kind of thing. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, look at this thing. And all of a sudden, hey, man. And it was George Jones. And I said, I looked up and he was there. He was with the crowd around him.
That's crazy.
And walking, I said, George. And I said, what the hell? And I told him, I said, it's a Bigsby, blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, I said, what the hell are you doing here? I asked him. He said, well, this is where I live. This is my hometown. I don't know if he was born there or not.
Was this Beaumont?
It was Beaumont.
Okay, yeah. I think that is where he's
from. I think that's what he said. Yep. Anyway, he said, this is where else? I'm from here. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I'll be danged. I wonder whatever happened to you, And he said, well, came back here. And I said, I told you should go back to, Anyway, the rest is history. So we would run into each other often. Yeah. And just holler out. We go Tracy Gardens, or we go, familiar story that we had from each other. And anyway, and that happened to Larry a lot too. Anyway.
So another question, I want to make sure we discuss how you ended up in Commander Cody's band, the Lost Planet Airmen. Now, did you meet them out here in California?
I'm trying to remember now. Okay, how that happened. Yeah, it was like, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think yeah.
And do you remember who introduced you to them, or did they look you up, or what happened?
My brain is so foggy. I got that fog rot. What do you call it?
Oh, I know. We all have it.
Do we all? Yeah, that's a weird. Isn't that weird?
No, we all do.
It's a weird thing.
I usually have a really good memory.
Oh,
my memory is better on here than it is when I'm off camera. That's the truth.
Well, that's me too. Right now, I'm telling you stuff I thought I'm surprised I could remember. Right. But I'm telling you what I'm telling you is absolute truth.
Do you remember what year you met those guys? Was it when they first moved out?
Thing. I never bother with years. I don't know why. It just becomes a. But it was. I'm going to say late '60s maybe.
Yeah, like '68, maybe '69.
And so here, but what happened was. We had moved, my brother and I had wound up from our Tracy Garden days, which is that we were kids, kids in there. We wound up, continued to put together bands, and as we grew older, and we were one of the number one bands in the Bay Area at that time. And we got to play in so many shows, and like not that was anything to brag about, but San Quentin, name it, everywhere.
Yeah.
The Circle Star Theater, whatever.
Right. Yeah, those are big venues.
And we were just like the Texas bands that I went back and played with for a while. It was a backup.
The dance hall thing.
That was those bands that you would get hired to do behind stars.
Right.
And so we did a lot of that. And in doing so, what was the Cody thing?
Yeah.
We would at times come back home to the Bay Area because it was always our main home. Mm-hmm. We looked at as our real home.
Right.
And we at times we lived in Nashville for a while and did all that, the Opry and all that. But that's another whole thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're playing back. We go to another club and we were doing the backup thing there as well. Every time we'd go back home, it would happen. And so we're doing one night a week. We would have a talent contest, and I think if I'm not mistaken, the prize was either a pretty good cash prize or a trip to Hawaii, something like that. And so it would drew a lot of people for that contest. That was like a Wednesday night thing. Mm-hmm. And we were playing there 5 or 6 nights a week at this place called Cowtown. And so we one contest one night, this guy comes in, and I can't remember whether it was Kirchen. I wish I could remember which it was.
Yeah.
But one just him, came in and got up and played, and he won. These guys were seasoned veterans by now.
Right.
And so they get up there and they put the rest of the contestants to shame, So they would, let's hear it for, and then the people would clap, and they'd how we got the winners. And so I think it was, I wish I could remember which one was first. Bill could tell you.
Yeah.
But he may have been the first one. Because he did, he just sang and played guitar. I think as I recall, he sang too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because people, just a guitar player alone, didn't matter who you were. You'd be, Chet Atkins, and they want to know if he could sing. Mm-hmm. And so he won. Mm-hmm. So he supposedly, from the story I remember, all the Cody guys weren't there. He was just there with maybe
it was just
somebody
Bill.
else.
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah.
And he won, so he told everybody else about it. So anyway, the rest of the guys, one by one, not all of them, just a few of them. But for example, especially Andy Stein, he was a fiddle player, which is an unusual thing to have in a rock band of any kind. It was a fiddle, but he didn't play
doubled
fiddle.
On sax too.
He played sax and he played violin like nobody's business. He could play. He came from a musical family of serious musicians, pianists, violinists, and he could play.
And Andy Stein ended up being on Garrison Keillor's
That's
show
right.
as the band leader.
Oh yeah, and because he was Andy Stein
really
was
musical,
one of the greatest talents that I've ever known and worked with.
Yeah,
and he could play. So he did the obvious thing that most fiddle players hear. They question. Everybody hollers, "Orange Blossom Special," and oh, geez, okay. Right. It was like what steel guitar right with the steel players. It's like, oh shit, I don't want to do that again. But it was the one that people were familiar with. So anyway, so he did that, and like nobody ever did before.
Won that one.
And easy winner, boy. They just went, woo.
Yeah.
Roof almost came off of them. And just, guys, so across the street was another, I wish I could remember the club. This is a club alley. It was like clubs around there.
Was this in San Jose?
San Jose.
Okay, yeah. Saddle Rack? Not the Saddle Rack.
The Saddle Rack was one of them. That was a little bit later.
Right.
After that.
Okay.
But this was like this is the Cowtown. This is called Cowtown.
Yeah.
And it was strictly, country. Country had become... It was Western swing for a while, and then it became country with, more jazzy than the...
Right.
And then hillbilly kind of eventually just sort of disappeared. The real, true hillbilly stuff. Mm-hmm. I liked all of it myself. And that's one of the reasons that I've been able to last so long. I like all the genres, almost all.
Now, you were older than these guys in the Cody band by 10 years?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 10 years older.
Yeah.
So what was that like being with all these hippie players?
We thought, these guys, these guys, why are they doing all this and this? Because they're not country guys.
Right.
They're whatever.
Smoking.
Well, we knew that they were like pulling a fast one on everybody, but it's okay.
Right,
They did a pretty good job, But
so what was that like for you?
And so we got to know, there was I'm trying to remember the guys across the street. They became famous, and I'll think of them.
Oh, was it Asleep at the Wheel?
No, that was later.
All right.
But anyway, these guys would come from the other clubs and say, "What the hell, you guys? Get all these people coming in here and getting all this stuff going on and blah 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 talking." and became real rivals. So sort of the clubs were getting into a real rival thing. It even at times got kind of seriously unsafe.
Wow.
We got called. There was a times, I won't go into detail, but there were times we would call in. We'd have to go and do police. Go in and have the police do a deposition.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
A few times of people. And this one place I was working at Cowtown there. One night they found the piano player that had come up. A piano player had come up from L.A. and I had gone off and played with somebody else. You know, and pretty soon we were kind of getting people to take our place. And this poor piano player came up from L.A. and took somebody's place in the band, and I was gone somewhere else. And once in a while, I go back into town, and they'd come out and play, but not as a regular. And so this one time, they found this guy's body out in the back of this,
wow,
in one of the those big garbage things, you know, out in the back of those stores.
Unbelievable.
And they found this guy's. I felt so bad.
Was it drugs or something, or what do you think?
Well, it was supposedly, but they said it was obvious that he'd been murdered.
Wow.
And so we were called in to do a deposition. So these club owners, I think, I don't want to name any names, but these club owners, it's like an underworld.
Yeah.
At this time. The clubs, people want to, no matter who you were, you want to know what club did you like to go to?
Right.
What is your favorite club? The club of life was like crazy, not just for musicians, but everybody.
Yeah.
And so a lot of shenanigans went on. And this guy had been murdered.
Wow.
I don't remember whether he was shot. I can't remember which. And they wanted to go home, but I did, of course, and didn't know anything about it. We
right.
Just, yeah.
You were out of town, yeah.
And they wouldn't take the first, but anyway, we did this a few times. Got called in. We never had to squeal on anybody because we didn't really know, we didn't have anything to do with any of that.
Right.
But it happened a lot often. And it was the nightlife became somewhat dangerous at times. And for example, I probably get off the subject here a little bit, but for example, the fights that would start sometimes in these big clubs that had big crowds would get really, really bad.
Did you guys ever have to play in the chicken wire stages?
I did it, not in California, but I did in
Texas.
Texas,
yeah.
I did in Texas, yeah. I'd heard about it. I thought, oh my God, here we go. I got to play behind the chicken wire.
So did you guys have the thing of like, you keep playing if there's a fight that breaks out? You just keep playing.
Stay on stage.
Yeah.
You stay on stage.
You never stop.
Well, my brother, eventually we wound up, I'd get calls to go on the road with somebody. And then my brother would too, separately at occasions. So we weren't always a team. And we always missed each other so much, you know.
Yeah.
So we each had these, but this one particular time, I was out talking outside. There was a phone, in those days phone booths were busy. And I was out calling a girlfriend or somebody. And I saw these guys, a whole bunch of guys come in. It looked like, they looked to me like it might be the San Jose State football team. Big dudes, you know, coming in. They all came in. I thought they were unusual because we knew most of the regulars and never saw these guys before. They came in. It was about 7 of them. And they went in, and pretty soon, I went back in to play. I was on a break, and I went back in, and just right after I go into break, we started playing, and a fight breaks out, and all of a sudden, the whole house, it was packed, a big club that we're playing, the Cowtown.
Yeah.
And all hell broke loose, and people started fighting, and you know, it got so bad that the bartenders, and we had a tough bouncer. He was a doorman, and all clubs in those days had to have at least one big bouncer, a guy that could really, you know.
Yeah.
And we had one, and he was being taken down, and people and the regulars fighting. These 7 guys were in there, and I still thought they must be the football team. They were big and strong. What
were they? Were they bikers?
To this day, I don't know what.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Wow.
The biggest one, I swear, and you hear this from a lot of people describe people like this, but he looked just exactly like Bluto. I mean, he was this big. He was just tall. I mean, he was the biggest guy I've ever seen in my life. He's 7 feet. I don't know what he was.
Wow.
And he must have weighed 400 or 500 pounds. You know,
Crazy.
He was in the center of these guys, and these guys were all. The only thing I can think of is that's what they did.
Yeah.
They like to go out.
They like to start fights. Yeah.
Start fights, and it was fun for them.
Wow.
And that's what they came in this one night. We had other fights too, but never one to match this one. This is the one that stands out.
Now, were you playing with Cody at this time, or?
No. I was playing in the when I come back home off the road from people, I'd wind up playing at one of these clubs and stuff for a while. And they let me kind of come and go.
Now, with Cody, were you on the road with those guys for a long time?
Yeah.
And do you remember how long? Like, was it 20 years? Or?
No, it wasn't that long.
Okay.
It was a long time to me, it seems like, but it was only maybe several.
Several years? Okay.
But
you're on a lot of the records, aren't you?
Yeah.
Did you play on the hits, Smoke That Cigarette?
Not originally. I didn't play in Smoke. In fact, as a matter of fact, when I was at Cowtown,
Hot Rod Lincoln, did you play on that?
Eventually, but not the original. Not the
original
first
recording.
They did it over a couple of times.
Right.
Anyway. And I thought, I really don't want to play with those guys. You know, they were these rock and roll guys, and they weren't. I didn't feel that they were really other than Andy. Andy Stein was a true musician.
Yeah,
I mean, really good. Yeah. But these guys were, and so I didn't at that time give rock and rollers a lot of credit. I guess you might say. They were, because they were really into stuff that I was not yet into. You know, I didn't really care about it.
Right.
I liked swing. I liked, country. I liked Hawaiian. I liked just about anything.
Well, they did a fair amount of swing, as I recall.
Oh, yeah.
Like Boogie Woogie and...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Truck driving songs.
I'll tell you what, though. My time with the Cody band was probably the biggest thing of my life because of what it led to. I was able to do. I was able to see most of the world.
Yeah.
Traveling
with them.
I played with those guys. Well, not just them, but I was able to play. And I tell people, they say, "Oh, you're full of it," you know. No, I'm not. I wouldn't have no reason to ever lie about it. I played every state except Alaska with either them or Doug Song. Doug Song was another guy.
You played with Doug Song.
I played with him. Whenever Doug Song would come anywhere near this area, he'd always come out to see me, look me up.
Wow.
And we hit it off from the very get-go. We first met each other, and I can't remember where it was. Sir Douglas, you know, he had Sir Douglas Quintet, and he was going around on his hit that he had.
Mendocino?
Mendocino, and then they had another one after that, too. But anyway, he wound up looking me up all the time, and so he said, I'd like to have you go out and do a tour with me. And so, So I said, okay.
Now, did you play all over the world with both those groups, or did you play in Europe and stuff with them? No,
I did with Sir Douglas, with Doug. I did. Well, I wish I had more from him, but that was one thing up there. But I did. He would always have good players. Yeah, that's what I've heard. He was really good at that because he himself was an outstanding musician and singer, and I really feel I shouldn't say this, but he went down. Not went down, but he would lower what he had to do to make it. He could do. He was one of the most talented guys I've
always
ever
heard
known.
that. Yeah,
he was. And he didn't look like it. He looked at him. He liked because he played that. He did that role of being this guy. Yeah, screwed up and whatever. Yeah, he could sing. He could the songs.
He's a great musician.
He was a great artist. And I, for example, one time we were on a boat. We did ships, and I did all kinds. You played everywhere you could think of. Yeah, I was doing a boat trip one time with him, and we went back and they said, "Hey, there's a bar." The guys in the band said, "Bobby, let's go back to the bar on the back end of the ship." And we went back and he got Doug and so he went back there. And so what's his name? The keyboard player, Dr. John. Huh? Dr. John? No, but with Augie Meyer? Augie. Yeah. Augie was it. Okay. So he goes up, we go to the back room, and there's a lot of people in the back bar of this big ship. And he goes up to Augie goes up to and there's a trio playing, and they're like a foreign trio. They're from, who knows where, Italy or France or someplace, and they're kind of doing their broken English, singing, American songs. the American standards, you know, were all over the place. And they were doing this thing, and it was like it was bass, guitar, and accordion.
Okay.
Playing.
Right.
And they were good. I went in there and heard these guys are pretty good players for that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so Augie goes up to and we went and got a table and started getting some drinks and stuff. And Augie goes, and I thought, I hope he's not. But sure enough, he was going up saying, hey, we've got a star, American star here. He's got a number one song.
Right.
But, ooh. Yeah. So they had this guy come up. So had Doug come up, and I thought, that asshole. Why did he do that? I don't like to try to attract attention. I go out and just be like anybody else.
Right, right.
Kind of just fade into the crowd. And I don't like to go out and strut my stuff, you know, and here I am, you know. And that's what now Doug, he didn't mind doing that. He didn't really do that at all.
Yeah.
And he just had anyway. So he didn't say, oh, shucks me. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right.
So he goes up there and he asked the guy, he said, could I borrow your guitar? And he, oh, yeah. And the guy takes the guitar. And I thought, oh, man, I'm going to get out of here, you know. And he gets up there and he starts singing. And he starts, look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten off the tree. And he sang like a
crooner.
Crooner.
Yeah.
Not like he was,
right.
but he did it well.
Yeah, I bet.
And he played guitar. And these people were all like, and they got a big hand, and I thought, I'd be damned.
Yeah.
You know, Doug's song he showed me at that moment one of his many
that he could do pretty much anything.
Talent that he had.
Yeah.
He was a talented guy.
Yeah, sure was.
And he also, with people like that, was also his worst enemy.
Yeah.
And it did him in. He died young.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, so many people I've known in the business did that. And I feel so bad for him. Doug, especially Doug, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to know him as just a person and everything. He'd look me up and he'd always say, you know, I'm always telling everybody I want to be like Bobby Black. You know, he'd probably tell everybody that. I don't know.
Great.
But he said, I tell everybody, you know. And Doug was, and that's not why I liked him, but because he was just talented. I loved him for his talent. And I think he died alone in a motel room someplace.
I hate to hear that.
Yeah. We did Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
With him.
Wow.
And did a great job.
That's something, man.
I mean, he could pull off a gig anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
do it.
like it.
And there was Carnegie Hall was one. I did Carnegie Hall with the Cody band too.
Wow. That is something, man.
And I didn't even have to practice. But I had practice, but in a different way.
Well, speaking of practice, let's go do a song right now. What do you say?
Oh, sure.
Is that all right?